I now pronounce you man and knife. Hello, my name is Will, and you're listening to Exploding Helicopter, the podcast that never dies, it just reloads. Now, after the Expendables proved the adage it's never too late to put old dogs through exactly the same tricks, it was inevitable that Sylvester Stallone would round up the boys for another medley of tongue-in-cheek heroics and stomach-churning blood spillage. So you hardly need the IQ of MIT alumni Dolph Lundgren to work out that the film we're reviewing on this show is The Expendables 2. To help me review the film, I'm joined by Heather Baxendale-Walsh from the MILFcast. Welcome to the show, Heather.
Hi, thank you for having me on. I'm so excited. I've wanted to come on for years.
Well, I'm pleased to be able to make that dream come true for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, your show's called Exploding Helicopter right there. It's it's my wheelhouse.
Well, it is, yeah. It is exactly your wheelhouse because, I mean, when we were sort of bandying a few titles around to do for this show, it was no surprise to me that you suggested this one, as I know you're a big action fan, especially of those 80s and 90s films.
Oh, they're dear to my heart. I mean, science fiction and action films are exactly what spoke to me as a child. But on the weekends when my dad was home, he was always working 2 or 3 jobs. So he would occasionally be home on the weekends, and all he wanted to do was sit on the couch and watch a good old Arnie or Sly flick, or we'd turn on the TV and you'd get to pick up some really bad Chuck Norris one, Steven Seagal. And then my mom had a thing for Jean-Claude Van Damme. I mean, some girls liked princess movies. I liked explosions and action films. This was my dream come true.
Well, there you go. But so of the kind of classic actors from those films like Arnie, Sly, Bruce, and JCVD, who of those is your favourite?
Oh, Arnie, hands down. Arnie is my favorite movie star of all time. I have him right up there with probably Sigourney Weaver and Robin Williams for me. I will still go pay to see any movie that Arnie puts out. In fact, one of the reasons I think I married my husband was because on my first date, he took me to The Last Stand. He took me to an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. I'm like, this is great. This guy knows exactly what I like.
But I got to ask, I'm intrigued by your mum's predilection for Jean-Claude Van Damme. What was, was it his ability to do the splits? Was it his Belgian accent? What was it about, JCVD that appealed to your mum?
I think it was all of that. There was definitely a spin kicking thing that she got excited about. She liked action movies too, but she tolerated my dad's affection for them more than embrace them. But her and her best friend would watch any genre. They worked in a video store when I was young too, so we got to see all the movies before they came out. She would come over and watch them, and I would hear them both go, "Spin kick, Jean-Claude, spin kick," and they'd clap and cheer. It was great. I even had a life-size stand-up of him from Time Cop. I was in, I think, 6th grade that I used to take pictures with. Yeah. So I had a great upbringing as far as cinema is concerned.
But before we get stuck into the movie, I wanted to kind of, I know that you are a big fan of like all of these classic action movies like Predator, Commando, and Aliens. But, I wondered if there was an action film out there that you feel is a bit underrated or one that you think should be, a bit better known.
I don't want to be a broken record, but I will be. I every time I have the opportunity to do so, I want to pump up Dread. It is so good. And it seems like sometimes these cult followings do. Sometimes, a good 5 to 10 years after the movie's been out for a while, you start to see more people go, yeah, that's it. And I'm starting to see that more with it. But because I always talk about it, I think I'll do Jean-Claude Van Damme here. One of my favorite, and it's science fiction as well, but one of my favorite movies of all time as a kid was Universal Soldier. And it's rated, and it still holds up pretty well. The action sequences in it are brilliant because Roland Emmerich's responsible. He's better at blowing things up than anyone other than Michael Bay for the most part. And Jean-Claude's perfect in it. He gets to play a stoic robot type. And
same for Dolph.
Dolph gets to be full on Dolph. I mean, it embraces everybody's strengths, and the action in it is awesome. And it's basically one really cool chase scene. And even at the end there with the truck and whatnot, it starts to get that like sense of duel almost. So that also fed into my happiness. But I think it's a great movie, and I think it still holds up today. So even with the ridiculous sequels that are kind of just fun and goofy, I think the first one stands on its own pretty solidly. And I always recommend people to watch it because a lot of people haven't seen it or even heard of it.
Well, talking of Universal Soldier and underrated action movies, I wondered if you've seen Universal Soldier Day of Reckoning.
Is that the third one?
That is the fifth one.
Fifth one. Oh my goodness. Okay, I missed the third one and I haven't seen the fifth one. So no, I have not.
Well, I would suggest that you go and check that out because it's a real cult action movie. It's definitely one that has picked up a lot of fans, and it is really justifies the hype. It's got both Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dolphin. It's also got Scott Adkins in the lead role, and it junks a few things from the Universal Soldier lore. But I think what it adds and what it brings is so fantastic. It's got brilliant action. It's got a really sophisticated plot, which is, it's got shades of Apocalypse Now in there. It is a seriously good film and definitely action movie that I would pick out as one that deserves to be better known. So I'd really, if you like Universal Soldier, I'd really recommend going and checking that one out. The fourth one is pretty good as well, but the fifth one is seriously good, and it's a film that I like to introduce people to. So yeah, I'd really urge you, Heather, to go and watch that one.
I will. I have no idea how it fell off my radar.
Well, if you watch it, let me know what you make of it, but I would be keen to hear your view.
I absolutely will.
Right, I think it's time to get stuck into the Expendables 2. So let's listen to a bit of the trailer and see if we can make out what on earth these gruff and grizzled voices are saying.
What do you want from me, Church?
I knew the day would come when you were going to pay me back. You can't let the contents of that safe fall into the wrong hands.
Track him, find him, kill him.
You're gonna need more men if you expect to get out of here alive.
You're terminated.
In your dreams.
Here we go!
So, The Expendables 2. Stallone and the boys are forced to accept a mission to retrieve a computer from a downed airplane in Albania. It should be a straightforward job, but the team are ambushed by Jean-Claude Van Damme and his gang of international criminals. It turns out the computer has the location of 5 tons of plutonium that Van Damme wants to sell on the black market. The Expendables track Van Damme to an old abandoned mine where he's trying to recover the nuclear material, and then the whole thing finishes off with the inevitable big confrontation. Back again are Stallone, Statham, Bruce, Arnie, Dolph, Cruise, Couture and Jet Li. They're joined in this episode by JCVD, who plays a villain named Villain. Also joining the action circus are Scott Adkins and Chuck Norris. This time, directorial duties are handled by Simon West, who helmed Con Air and The Mechanic. The film's got a 6.6 rating on IMDb and a 67% audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes. But let's find out what Heather made of The Expendables 2.
I think this is my favorite of the trilogy, to be honest. It's not as, I think, whole as the first Expendables, but as far as fun and really embracing the individualities of all the actors and their backgrounds, I think this one does it the best, while still maintaining the very simple, straightforward bad guy, good guy plot. But what it zeroes in on too is everyone's specialties, and it really highlights them well. But I mean, I just love so much that you actually get to have Arnie, Bruce, and Sly actually do some work together in this one. It is easily, when they're in the airport at the end, one of my favorite cinematic scenes ever. And they're just throwing out cliches left and right. The whole entire shot is like something out of a Call of Duty map in the game, but it's exactly like that. It feels like it. Even the ridiculous amount of bad guys that are just going down arbitrarily, but it's very tongue in cheek. This one has, I think, a lot more fun overall with itself. I feel like the first one, we kind of got more of we have to make this film actually work from beginning to end. We need to hit certain beats and that kind of thing. Whereas this one, I just felt like everybody was having so much fun. So as far as I'm concerned, this one is top notch. And then Jean-Claude bringing him in at the time too, where he's not particularly beloved anymore, and he hadn't done anything particularly noteworthy career-wise at this point either. He looked fantastic in it as a villain. Yes, he looked a little older and ragged, but they all are. but it never takes itself too seriously. And I think that's part of why it works. It's simple. It's straightforward. It's everything you loved about 80s and 90s action films. And it's served on a beautiful platter for you.
Well, yeah, I definitely agree with you. I mean, I think this is a really fun movie, really enjoyable movie. I saw it in the cinema and I loved it then, and I've seen it quite a few times again since then, and I always enjoy watching this film. And I think a couple of really great points I think you mentioned there, which is, it does some stuff which I think, the classic we took for granted in the classic movies. It kind of gives you some characters you care about. There's a pretty straightforward plot. There's some well done action scenes, and it's all wrapped up in 100 minutes. And that's pretty much what you want from these types of films. And I think the other big thing that you mentioned is this film really kind of embraces who these actors are and what audiences want from them. And I completely agree with you about the difference in tone between this film and the first film. And I think that obviously after that first one, I think they kind of realize, okay, we're on to something. We can sort of work with this in a slightly different way. And it's just really nice to see all these guys in one film back actually in a film that's released in cinemas, because that's not something that Dolph or Jean-Claude had experienced really in many of the years before they got involved with this particular series. And some of their recent outings, it's always a bit of a worry about what you're going to get. You love these guys from the old days, but you do sometimes, some of the stuff that they appear in can be rather embarrassing. But this is legit good solid action movie. And I kind of think that, some of the ratings that I see on the, IMDb, I kind of think, what's people's beef here? I don't quite understand why only 6.7.
Yeah. I mean, what are you expecting going into it? I'm not a huge horror genre movie person, but I go in with the right expectations when it comes to seeing a film in that wheelhouse. If I'm going to see some torture porn, then I'm preparing myself. It's not my cup of tea, but I'm trying to go in with an objective perspective and go, okay, this is what the movie's trying to do. So I'm going to try and embrace what that is. Why would you go to see this movie if you weren't into this kind of stuff? It's just ridiculous. It's like, I understand if it's not your cup of tea, but it's exceptional at what it's attempting to do. It just does everything that it should.
For sure. Well, let's talk a little bit about the tone of this film, because we've already sort of touched on it a little bit, which is, I think that the tone of this one is substantially different to the first film. So the Expendables, you've got this veteran cast who all get to play these colourful characters, and the first film played things pretty straight, and it does strive in places for serious. That's obviously in context of the type of, this is still an action movie, but you have the characters in that particular film contemplating the cost of war, the cost of violence, whereas in this sequel it's very much trading on the personas of the actor. Everyone's got one-liners which are callbacks to their other films. It's much more wink type of stuff with the audience. And do you have a preference for the kind of the tone? I mean, you've already said that The Expendables 2 is your favorite. Is that down to the tone, or is that down to the action?
I think it's the action and the tone. I appreciate the first film. The first film's probably a better movie, strictly speaking. But as far as rewatchability goes, and pure enjoyment, I think this one is better in that way. It's basically a love letter to action fans. It's basically saying, thank you. Here, we're giving this to you for all of your love and support all of these years. We're going to still give it back. It felt personal in that way. Instead, often when you get cliches or you get those tag backs to other movies with actors and characters and things, sometimes it's forced and it doesn't feel right. Here, the entire spirit worked together. And I think that's why it's so enjoyable.
Do you think, though, that in places, I mean, there are a couple of moments, I agree with what you say, but there are a couple of moments where I do sort of wince slightly. And there's one exchange in your favourite scene in the movie in the airport where I think it's Arnie and Bruce have a conversation, and they basically do three of their one-liners like back to back, and that one just felt like they'd already made that joke a bit earlier in the film, and I think that one should have been that one maybe should have been left on the cutting room floor.
It should have, and I don't. They might have just been playing off each other at that point too, because it didn't fit in. I think it was something along the lines, Arnie did another "I'll be back." Okay, Arnie, we get it. Once in every movie, I totally agree. Once in every movie, I want to hear Arnie say that because he's Arnie, so he can. But I think it was the second or third time he said it in the film, and I think Bruce said, "This time I'll be back," which that was funny, but. One of them replied with "Yippee-ki-yay," and I'm like, "Oh, come on!" Yeah, you're right. They dragged it out a bit. It was taking it a little too far. And I think so. Even the Chuck Norris moment, which was fantastic, how he shows up. But he even did a Chuck Norris meme. I think he did something along the lines of, "I was bit by a cobra, and it was 5 days of pain like a man has never felt in his life, and then finally the cobra died." And that in itself is really funny, but it was like, all right, you're taking out of the movie then. You're starting to detract from it.
One thing I wanted to chat to you about was, we grew up on the films which, made all these actors stars. So we've got that historical context when we watch these particular movies. But I wanted to see what you thought about, if you were a 13-year-old watching this film today, what would you make of it? I mean, do you think that we were probably that age when we were watching, Stallone and Schwarzenegger in their heyday in the 80s? But I kind of wonder what a 13-year-old watching this film today would make of it. I mean, would they relate to the stars? How reliant is this film on understanding the backstory of these actors?
I think to really appreciate this one in particular, I think the first one stands alone very well. It balances everything out a lot more. It plays to all of their specialties, the character types that they've all played and their strengths, but it also holds strong to the story that's put forth. This one, it's not going to stand alone that well. And to someone without the background behind some of the actors, I'd even say not my kids, because they've grown up watching all the same movies that I love, but someone else's kids, they might not know who Dolph Lundgren or Jean-Claude is. But some of these guys, they might not know their background. They're not going to understand some of the jokes. Like my kids, for instance, they wouldn't, outside of Chuck Norris memes, they're not going to understand who Chuck Norris is. So I think that probably would be lost on newer, younger audiences. And I think specifically this one you could see was geared towards us middle-aged folk.
So we've talked about Expendables 2, and we've mentioned the first film in the series. So, seeing as we're here, we're talking about the series, I wondered if, what your thoughts were about the third film and, how you would rank them all in order.
As good films, better films, I think the first one's probably the best film. As far as I enjoy them, I would put the second one first, and then the first, and then the third would come at the end. I think it took what the second did. I still find it enjoyable and fun. I'm not going to poop in its Cheerios entirely, but I think it took a little bit of the second one and ran with it a bit excessively. And we added some characters that I wasn't particularly fond of. I don't like Ronda Rousey very much, and I don't think she deserved to be there. There are so many great action women. If I made a list right now of action women stars versus current younger action male stars, I have a way longer female list that I think is awesome and consistent than men, and I think that is great. And I never expected that to happen. However, I embrace that. So you have these great women action stars that have been out doing work for the last 10, 20 years, and you throw UFC
human punching
chick
bag, Ronda Rousey.
Yeah. I mean, I felt kind of that way about Randy Couture being in the first one too, but he really worked and he fit in with everybody. And I ate my words with that one. So I was fine with it. But she stood out like a sore thumb, and every scene she was in, I cringed. So that took away from me a bit too. And it did just feel a little bit more like, as sequels tend to do, get more ridiculous, get a little crazier, and take away from joy. That all being said, I still think it was a fun movie. However, I think I've only watched that one maybe 2 or 3 times, and I've seen the first one and the second one double digits.
I saw Expendables 3 again, saw it in the cinema, and I thought it was a bit of a mess. And I just thought, they've really lost the plot here with what made these films work. But actually, having gone back and watched it again, I think I watched it 2 or 3 times now. It's actually sort of gone up in my estimation. It's definitely my least probably preferred of the series, and it's definitely got some problems. I do think it's got too many people in, and then the film just becomes like unwieldy because you've got people like, you know, bobbing in from the left and then exiting stage right just because we've still got another 14 characters to introduce and explain their involvement in this particular plot. But it's definitely one it's gone up in my estimation. I've kind of accepted its flaws for what they are, but I can still get a lot to enjoy out of that particular movie. So it's worth going back to and giving another watch to, I would say.
There's a ton of fun in it, and as per the first two, there's some incredible action sequences. There's a lot of great humor in it, and it's just a little bit chaotic and a bit much at times. But that being said, it's still fun.
So the last thing that I wanted to throw at you was, we live in an age where no, franchise or series can exist without it being rebooted. So I wanted to sort of pretend it's the year 2040 and the Expendables series is being rebooted. So what I wanted to put to you was, who do you think we are going to see in the cast for the rebooted Expendables series that is bound to happen at some point in the future?
I think without a doubt, you're going to put right at the top is going to be The Rock.
He was my number one
okay.
as well.
Yeah, I mean, who can deny it? And here's the thing, too. When he started off, I've never been a pro wrestling fan, aside from Hulk Hogan. I love Hulk Hogan. But aside from Hulk Hogan, I've never been a pro wrestling fan. So I initially, when he decided he wanted to be an actor, was all thumbs down. I'm not watching. I don't like him. No. Oh, my gosh, he so won me over in the last decade. I love him. I watched Baywatch because of him. And you know what? I actually enjoyed parts of it. So there. But he's fantastic. He does everything great. He's one of those few actors that still have that same like machismo and just this bravado about him, to where everything he says is charming and likable. And it's like he is from a different generation, our time of the 80s and 90s. And I love him. But aside from that, look at the man. His arms are bigger than my whole body. He's an impressive looking creature, and he stays with it. So I have no doubt that in 2040, he will still be a force to be reckoned with, and I would put him in there. After him, I would put Zoe Saldana in there. She is probably, after him, I think, the best action star out there. She has been killing it for the last 15, 20 years, and I think she's extremely underrated. And she has acting chops.
Yeah. I had her down along with, and she's a bit of a personal favourite of mine, I had Zoe Saldana down alongside Milla Jovovich, who she's got a really good kick-ass career of action movies and science fiction movies behind her, and I think she possibly, I think they were talking about her being in one of these movies, but I don't know if that was just, kind of internet scuttlebutt. But I think she would be fantastic in these movies now. And if we can't have her in Expendables 4, then she should be in the rebooted series.
Absolutely, she was on my short list as well. And again, too, on this list, I have I think more strong female leads here. I think Scarlett Johansson has more than proved herself in that capacity as well. I think you could take any of the Chris's, Pratt, Hemsworth, or Evans, even though I know Evans kind of wants to stray away from the action and do a lot more serious work. Chris Hemsworth is a perfect example, though. I think he's one of those guys that I think will probably over the next 10, 20 years, he has that same charm about him. He's ruggedly handsome. He has all of those things working for him, and he can deliver a line when he needs to. So I think he'd probably be up there. I think Michael B. Jordan is another good one that we may very well see down the road. Yep. He's still young, but I am a big, big fan of him. I would love to see Rona Mitra. I know that she's not huge and hasn't done a lot of stuff that a lot of people know about, but she shows up in stuff all the time. And Doomsday, she's so freaking awesome. I love her. So I would love to see her show up in a small role or a bigger role. Charlize Theron's another good one.
Do you think we'd see somebody? I thought somebody else that was on my list was probably butchering his name, but Iko Uwas, who's from the Raid films. He's in the kind of current The Night Comes From Us. I could kind of see him being in a future version of the Expendables for sure.
The Raid movies are so good. Absolutely some of the best martial arts I've seen ever. It's so good.
One of my fears, though, I did think, because this series has taken, a few like people from like the wrestling world and put them into this. I mean, they kind of were actors beforehand, but I kind of was thinking, maybe by 2040, somebody like Conor McGregor might end up in one of these movies.
Yeah. If he can, he might have some Jean-Claude Van Damme turns in his life, I think. So we'll see. He's kind of a bad boy, isn't he?
His reputation may not survive through to 2040, so that.
We'll see. 20 years is a long time, though, and as we've seen with the Expendables, some of our guys have had some highs and lows, and they still brought it around. So there's hope for him, definitely. Oh, and Vin Diesel. Yeah. How could we miss Vin Diesel? I love Vin Diesel.
Do you? I'm not.
I understand why people don't. I fell in love with him in Boiler Room.
Okay.
And I've been subsequently since then. I haven't seen all of the Fast and Furious movies, and maybe one day I will get to them all. Yeah, but I've seen all the XXX movies, and
if the rumors are true about the relationship between The Rock and Vin Diesel, I find it hard to think. You're probably going to have one or the other heading up that Expendables reboot. You're probably not going to have both of them. Who's it going to be, Rock or Diesel?
I think money would be on The Rock, unfortunately, though the series should stick with Vin Diesel, although I can't believe they're still making these movies. But if it was in an actual fight, I'd put all of my money on The Rock. All of it. And that's not a slight to Vin Diesel. He is an impressive man. I would put all of my money on The Rock. So, yeah, and I know he doesn't like being called The Rock, but he's The Rock.
Yeah. Well, I am as excited for this reboot as I am for the Expendables 4. So I look forward to seeing this film, and hopefully we can have some input on the casting for this remake.
Yeah, maybe they'll listen to your podcast and they'll hire us. They'll just put us on retainer until then. They'll say, "Hey, you two, 20 years from now, we know you're not doing anything else. You guys have your podcast, so just stick around."
I'm an optimist. I'm believing that is going to happen.
I do too.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be looking at the exploding helicopter action.
MovieMavericks.com, broadcasting current box office breakdowns, movie news, and reviews. Now for your hosts, Jason and Trevor.
Hey now, even though we're over 200 episodes deep into the Movie Mavericks podcast, it's still not too late to start listening.
Where every show we give you 10 truths, 20 lies, and a bunch of Hollywood secrets.
It's like existentialism slipping into nihilism.
MovieMavericks.com.
We're back, and now we're looking at the exploding helicopter action. This takes place during the rescue mission which opens the film. Our heroes, armed with all kinds of armoured vehicles, bust into a walled compound to rescue Arnie. Before you can say human growth hormone, Sly somehow is on a rooftop with his tanky vehicle which has a motorbike strapped to the back. A helicopter gunship swings into view, ready to fire, so Sly revs up the bike and sends it blasting into the helicopter cockpit. The chopper then nosedives straight into the ground and explodes. Heather, what did you make of the chopper fireball action?
I thought it was fantastic. Realistically, whenever you think of helicopters, to me, have always looked quite delicate. So that makes them fantastic targets.
Hey, you're talking to the right person here. They exist only in films to be blown up, and long may that continue. But yeah, this is a favourite of mine because it's. I do like a kind of slightly overcomplicated method of destruction. I like to. I've seen enough. Basically, I've seen enough helicopters be bazookaed. So anything that's a little bit quirky, anything that's a little bit different, I am totally on board for. So yeah, using a motorcycle as an aerial projectile is definitely something I want to see. And yeah, this sequence delivers. It's that classic sort of foreshadowing. I forgot what they call it. Chekhov's gun, isn't it? If you see a gun in the first act, it's got to be used by the third act. And you see this. There's several shots which kind of show you this motorbike on the front of that sort of tanky vehicle, and that's kind of the equivalent of Chekhov's gun. There, you kind of think, oh, what on earth is that doing there? And then obviously you don't have to wait too long to find out exactly why it's there.
No, but the anticipation of it is fun. And if you've seen enough movies, you take note of those things. And I think in some instances it can be a little irksome. But I think for the most part, when it's done right, which in this scenario it is, it builds that anticipation of, okay, something's going to happen. And something's going to go down. I, as much as you love exploding helicopters, I also love motorcycle sequences in films. Because, okay, I can drive a car, and I believe that I could race cars and do anything, but I know that I could never do anything on a motorcycle. So I'm even more impressed by any kind of motorcycle sequences. And I think that they are underutilized in films and should be more often, especially when you put them together with a helicopter.
Well, you have seen something that is, fairly unique here, a kind of combination of exploding helicopter with a motorcycle. So you have witnessed something fairly unique here, though it is not completely, novel, because I don't know if you're familiar with the Brian Bosworth movie Stone Cold. From the early 90s. So yeah, it was Hollywood's attempt to turn him into an action star, and that film has a fantastic sequence in there where motorcycle is shot out of the corridor of an office block, and it goes shooting through this window straight into a helicopter that is conveniently hovering outside. And so that's the earliest example of a helicopter being destroyed by a motorcycle being used as an aerial projectile. But yeah, Stone Cold, pretty good movie. If you I think you'd love that, because you've got Lance Henriksen running a sort of Hell's Angels style motorcycle gang, and so Brian Bosworth has to go undercover in order to find out what this group are up to. So it's got great action, it's got motorcycles in, plus it's got Lance Henriksen and a over the top William Forsythe in it. So I think you'd really enjoy Stone Cold.
Outstanding. Now I have 2 movies on my list of to-dos this week, which this week I will do, actually.
Okay, I think that just about wraps things up. Heather, thanks for joining me. Do you want to take a moment to plug your own podcasting and tell people where they can find you online?
Yes. You will get to hear from us at the MILFcast soon, I promise, Kai and myself. As I may have mentioned earlier, that for once it's not my fault that we've been in a little bit of a hiatus. It's Kai's this time. He's super busy doing all things nerdy, though. So I will plug Kai's fantastic artwork. You can find him at The Amazing Kaiderman on Instagram and check his stuff out. And you can follow me on Twitter at Heather_Kenobi. I admit I don't tweet as much as I should. You can probably find me doing more fun stuff on Instagram, though. And on my website that is just getting started, and that's headertime.com. So you can find me in any of those places doing things. I talk about running a lot on there, but I'm also reserving half the website to be devoted to all of my pop culture obsessions: gaming, movies, music, reading, all of it.
Well, I look forward to checking it out when it's up and running.
Thank you. It should be soon. I'm guessing probably at the end of the next month, unless I get too caught up in watching movies.
Now, this is the bit of the show where I make the obligatory podcaster's plea for you to leave us a review or give us a plug on social media, but I've been doing this long enough to know that you're not going to do that, so we can just move quickly along. We'll be back soon, but until then, keep watching the skies for those exploding helicopters.
This podcast is a proud member of the Lamb Podcasting Network. Find the network at largeassmovieblogs.com.
I'm almost out. I'll be back.
You've been back enough.
I'll be back.
Yippee-ki-yay.